Looking for a fast way to track what's moving online right now? Head over to Qnotables.com. It's a centralized index of notable clips, headlines, and references being shared across the community, organized for quick browsing. Use it to spot patterns, pull links, and build your own research list. Qnotables.com. Browse the notables, verify the facts, stay informed. All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here. From the Q Research boards, January 11, 2026. Activist group trains thousands to shadow and harass ICE agents. In Minnesota, more than 1,000 activists packed a church for an anti-ICE upstander training run by left-wing group Monarca. Trainees were urged to follow ICE agents, blow whistles, make noise, and be like a mosquito to disrupt operations, while being given manuals and gear lists for future actions. Supporters call it community defense. Critics say it's organized obstruction of federal law enforcement that puts agents and bystanders at risk. Treasury Secretary Bessent launches crackdown on Minnesota fraud. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has rolled out a sweeping package to tackle what he calls rampant government benefits fraud in Minnesota, where billions in taxpayer dollars have been looted through sham nonprofits and bogus claims. The plan tightens reporting, flags suspicious wire transfers, and threatens banks and money service businesses that look the other way. Bessent says the message is simple. The era of easy money for scammers is over, and taxpayers will finally get some real protection. Sixth death at Disney World in just a few months raises safety questions. Disney World is under scrutiny after another body was found on resort property, marking at least the sixth death since October. The latest case, a man discovered in a Disney Springs parking garage, is being investigated as a possible suicide. While officials say the park remains safe overall, critics argue the string of tragedies demands more transparency about on-site medical emergencies and mental health risks at America's biggest tourist attraction. Musk says X algorithm will go fully open source within a week. Elon Musk says his social platform X will release its new recommendation algorithm to the public within 7 days, including all the code that decides what posts users see, both organic and ads. The move is billed as a transparency win and will supposedly be updated every 4 weeks with full developer notes. Skeptics point out that earlier open-source promises were slow-walked, but if this happens, it will be an unprecedented look inside a major social networks engine. Trump declares national emergency to shield Venezuelan oil funds. President Trump has declared a national emergency to block courts and creditors from seizing billions in Venezuelan oil revenue held in U.S. accounts. The White House says the money will instead be used to stabilize Venezuela after the fall of Nicolás Maduro and to support a pro-American government. The order frustrates companies that spent years chasing compensation, but Trump argues that securing regional stability and future energy deals comes first. U.S. set to lock an $800 billion share of Ukraine reconstruction, Washington and Kyiv are preparing to sign a so-called prosperity deal worth an estimated $800 billion in reconstruction contracts for Ukraine. The agreement, expected to be finalized at Davos, would give U.S. companies preferential access to rebuilding projects and rare earth mining once the war subsides. Supporters say it ties American security commitments to long-term economic stakes. Critics warn it risks turning Ukraine's recovery into a carve-up for Western corporations. Netanyahu's chief of staff detained in leak investigation. In Israel, police have detained Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's chief of staff, Zaki Braverman, for questioning over an investigation into leaked classified material to German tabloid Bild. Braverman is suspected of obstructing the probe and possible breach of trust, tied to an earlier aide who allegedly leaked documents about Gaza war negotiations. The case deepens legal troubles around Netanyahu's circle and adds another layer of instability to Israel's already fraught political scene. Man pretends to aim gun at DHS officers during Santa Ana protest. At a tense protest in Santa Ana, California, one man thought it would be funny to mime pointing a gun at Department of Homeland Security officers. Agents and local police did not see the humor, quickly moving in as the crowd taunted federal personnel. The stunt underscores how dangerously fast these demonstrations can escalate when activists treat heavily armed law enforcement as props for social media instead of as serious security forces. Border Patrol warns Minneapolis drivers, "Don't make a bad decision today." Cell phone video from Minneapolis shows Border Patrol agents warning two white women in separate SUVs to stop trailing their vehicles during an active operation. An agent can be heard saying, "Don't make a bad decision today," a clear reference to the recent Renee Good shooting, where an ICE agent fired after being rammed. The clip highlights the new tension around immigration enforcement. Agents must finish dangerous missions while being stalked and filmed by self-appointed watchdogs. Activists claim food delivery apps are a lifeline for illegal immigrants online. Some activists are openly speculating that services like DoorDash and similar apps are now heavily used by illegal immigrants working off the books. While hard data is limited, it's clear these platforms rely on large numbers of low-wage drivers and rarely verify long-term work authorization beyond basic ID checks. Critics argue the gig economy model effectively launders illegal labor, while big tech pockets the profits and local communities absorb the social costs. Report: Australia spending billions for NGOs that import unskilled migrants. New reporting out of Australia estimates taxpayers are on the hook for roughly $5 billion a year for NGOs that help bring in large numbers of low-skilled migrants and asylum seekers. Supporters say the programs are humanitarian. Opponents argue they undercut wages, strain services, and serve the interests of ideological NGOs rather than working-class Australians. The fight mirrors debates across the West over whether migration policies are being driven by citizens or by unelected activist networks. Viral dossier lists alleged Labour Party predators in the UK. In Britain, a controversial list claiming to document Labour Party nonces and perverts is circulating online, naming former councillors and MPs convicted of sex crimes or serious misconduct. While some entries are based on public court records, others are less clear, raising defamation concerns. Even so, the document taps into a wider anger that political elites and their media allies have not been honest about abuse inside their own ranks. Armed colectivos in Venezuela accused of targeting regime opponents, retired U.S. General Michael Flynn, and Latin American observers are warning about Venezuelan colectivos. Regime-aligned armed gangs reportedly issued small arms and large amounts of ammunition. Their targets, according to these reports, are opposition activists and anyone suspected of supporting the U.S. operation that captured Nicolás Maduro. Human rights groups have long accused colectivos of terrorizing neighborhoods. Now, with the regime shaken, fears are growing of revenge attacks away from TV cameras. Protester scales Iranian embassy in London, hoists pre-revolution flag. Dramatic footage from London shows an Iranian protester climbing the facade of Iran's embassy, tearing down the Islamic Republic flag, and raising the pre-1979 Lion and Sun banner. Crowds of exiles cheered from the street as the old royal symbol flew over the building. The act is largely symbolic, but it sends a powerful message. Many Iranians abroad want nothing to do with the current regime and openly long for a completely different future. Iran's internet blackout enters third day as protests rage. In Iran, an almost total internet blackout has now stretched past 60 hours, with connectivity data showing national traffic flatlined while protests continue. Rights groups say the shutdown is a deliberate attempt to hide live ammunition fire, mass arrests, and killings of demonstrators. The regime's propaganda outlets remain online through foreign hosting, but ordinary Iranians are being cut off from the world as they risk their lives against the dictatorship. U.S. launches large-scale airstrikes on ISIS targets in Syria. The Pentagon has confirmed new large-scale airstrikes on ISIS positions in Syria, targeting weapons depots, training camps, and leadership hideouts. Officials say the operation is designed to prevent the terror group from regrouping amid regional chaos. Casualty figures are still being assessed, but early reports suggest dozens of militants killed. For many Americans, it's a reminder that while the headlines move on, the war on jihadist terrorism is far from over. Disney tragedies pile up as Happiest Place on Earth faces harsh reality. With at least 6 deaths linked to Disney World properties in just a few months, the happiest place on Earth is facing a darker narrative. From resort hotel incidents to a body found in a parking garage, investigators suspect suicides in several cases. Disney maintains its facilities are safe, but the cluster of tragedies is forcing a conversation about mental health, crowd stress, and whether massive resorts are equipped to handle vulnerable guests. NGOs accused of importing chaos, as Bessent vows mafia-style crackdown Treasury Secretary Bessent is not just going after direct fraud. He's signaling a wider crackdown on dark money NGOs behind protests and migrant pipelines. Comparing the effort to past operations against the mafia, Bessent says investigators will follow complex funding webs from wealthy foundations to street-level activism. The goal, he insists, is not to stop free speech, but to expose networks that profit from chaos while taxpayers foot the bill.
At shop.isawaya.com, everything you buy supports Qnotables, the place where people talk freely no matter what. Check out our Qn Honey Pot, a jar of yummy honey that's as strong as your voice. Put it on toast or in tea. It's not just honey, it's freedom in every bite. Then there's Qn Butter, a smooth handmade skin cream that makes you feel good while you fight for what's right. Awesome wooden pieces for display only. Hang them up or set them out. They're for showing off Qn's tough spirit. Want to help even more? Get a proto membership. So go to shop.isawaya.com now and grab some goodies. Help Qnotables keep free speech alive, and let's keep the
All
ideas.
reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here.
From the Q Research Boards. January 11, 2026. Vatican's role in Maduro's release raises questions. New reporting highlights the Vatican's apparent eagerness to see Venezuelan dictator Nicolás Maduro avoid international prosecution after his U.S. capture. Sources say high-level Catholic officials pushed for diplomatic channels that could allow Maduro to avoid punishment, prompting criticism from human rights advocates. The criticism underscores worries that religious diplomacy may inadvertently shield authoritarian leaders from accountability for crimes against their own people. 4chan's lawyer challenges UK-EU free speech restrictions. A prominent internet attorney associated with online communities is publicly challenging efforts in the UK and European Union to restrict speech online. In filings and social media statements, he argues that broad new regulations threaten core free speech rights and could empower governments to take down content arbitrarily. Digital rights groups say the push could reshape global internet policies for years to come. Rubio. Job memes go viral across social platforms. Social media is flooding with viral memes suggesting Florida Senator Marco Rubio should take on new leadership roles, a trend that exploded after a series of political controversies. The memes play on Rubio's name and political branding, turning a serious debate into a cultural flashpoint that's now trending across major platforms. The phenomenon highlights how meme culture can influence public perception and political momentum. Trump's Davos WEF Challenge countdown nears zero in Washington and on social platforms. Conservative commentators are counting down to former President Trump's planned address to the World Economic Forum in Davos. The event, now just weeks away, is being hailed by his supporters as a major statement against globalist economic policies. Trump's expected speech is promising to emphasize national sovereignty, energy independence, and friction with multinational agendas. Goldie Gamari highlights Iranian protests in millions. Commentator Goldie Gamari is amplifying footage and analysis, suggesting that millions of Iranians are taking to the streets against the clerical regime. She argues the scale of the protest movement represents one of the largest demonstrations in Iranian history. While exact crowd figures are hard to verify, images from multiple cities show massive crowds defying crackdowns and blackout conditions. Cell phone video released in Minneapolis ICE agent shooting. New cell phone footage from the Minneapolis scene involving an ICE agent shooting has been released to the public. The video shows a chaotic confrontation between federal agents and a vehicle that officers said was used in a dangerous way. The release is expected to play a key role in multiple ongoing investigations by local and federal authorities into use of force and protest interactions. Inside Netherlands' largest asylum center. A new report offers a rare inside look at Europe's largest asylum center in the Netherlands. Interviews with residents and staff describe overcrowding, cultural tensions, and strains on local services. Government officials say the facility is part of a broader effort to process migrants fairly, but critics say it highlights broader systemic issues that European nations must confront as pressures on their borders continue. Golden Glow Trump seen at Mar-a-Lago. Former President Trump was spotted at Mar-a-Lago with supporters describing him as in high spirits and full of energy. Pool reporters noted the relaxed but confident atmosphere at the club. Trump's presence is being framed by allies as a sign of ongoing engagement with political strategy and public outreach ahead of upcoming events. Headline: Naomi Wolf offers commentary on female political engagement script. Author Naomi Wolf has resurfaced with commentary on what she calls crazy female political behavior among certain activist groups. Wolf's remarks have drawn both support and criticism on social platforms and in talk radio. She argues that ideological extremism has taken root in gender-focused movements in ways that are disconnected from mainstream feminism. Trump warns Cuba: no more oil or money from Venezuela. President Trump has issued a blunt ultimatum to Cuba, declaring that the island will no longer receive large amounts of oil and money from Venezuela, now that Nicolás Maduro has been removed. Trump says Cuba's security forces propped up Venezuela's last two dictators, and that those days are over. He's urging Havana to make a deal before it's too late, signaling more economic and possibly military pressure if the regime doesn't change course. Trump openly boosts Marco Rubio as a future president of Cuba. In a half-joking, half-serious post, President Trump reacted to online chatter that Secretary of State Marco Rubio could one day be president of Cuba, adding, "Sounds good to me." The remark plays to Cuban exile communities in Florida and underscores how aggressively this White House is confronting Havana. While there's no real path for Rubio to lead Cuba, the comment sends a message. Washington is already talking about the island's post-communist future. Trump hints more moves soon, after Venezuela and Cuba warnings after ordering the raid that captured Nicolás Maduro and cutting off Venezuelan aid to Cuba. President Trump has teased that more actions are coming soon. Without specifics, he's hinted at pressure on other leftist governments in the region, including Colombia and Mexico, and even floated Greenland in earlier comments. The vague timeline keeps adversaries guessing and signals that the administration is not done reshaping the map of power in the Western Hemisphere. Erich von Däniken, father of ancient aliens theory, dead at 90. Swiss author Erich von Däniken, whose 1968 book Chariots of the Gods sparked worldwide fascination with ancient astronaut theories, has died at 90 in Switzerland. His book sold tens of millions of copies, popularizing the idea that alien visitors shaped early civilizations. Mainstream scholars blasted his work as pseudoscience and pseudo-archaeology, but his influence on pop culture, from TV documentaries to science fiction films, is undeniable. Trump pulls out of global bodies ahead of Davos showdown. With just weeks until the Davos summit, President Trump is moving to withdraw the U.S. from dozens of international organizations and agreements he says undermine American sovereignty. The administration argues that many of these bodies push globalist rules that override U.S. law, drain taxpayer money, and empower unelected bureaucrats. Supporters see the withdrawals as a long overdue correction. New banking rule rattles paper gold and silver markets. A new banking regulation taking effect Monday is already spooking parts of the precious metals world. Under updated capital rules inspired by international Basel standards, banks face stiffer requirements when holding certain paper gold or silver instruments on their balance sheets. Hard money advocates say the change exposes how fragile the paper metals system really is and could push investors toward physical bullion rather than complex derivatives. Giuliani blasts son of deposed Shah of Iran as a fraud. Former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani is taking aim at Reza Pahlavi, son of Iran's last Shah, calling him a fraud who has never risked his life for Iranian freedom. Giuliani, who has worked with various Iranian opposition groups, says Western elites treat Pahlavi as a safe, royal brand dissident, while real activists face prison and bullets. The comments highlight deep divisions among anti-regime Iranians over who should speak for their movement. Venezuela begins big release of political prisoners, Trump says. President Trump says Venezuela has started the process in a big way of releasing political prisoners after the fall of Nicolás Maduro. Early reports from human rights groups confirm that some high-profile detainees have walked free, though many remain missing or unaccounted for. The releases are being touted by Washington as proof that maximum pressure and the Maduro capture are producing real human rights gains on the ground. Colombia's Petro floats EU-US-style Gran Colombia bloc. Colombian President Gustavo Petro is reviving the old dream of Gran Colombia, proposing a tighter political and economic union across several Latin American nations modeled on the EU or a North American-style bloc. He says the region needs integrated markets and shared institutions to stand up to the US and China. Critics warn that given current instability, from Venezuela to Ecuador, the idea risks entangling relatively stable countries in their neighbors' chaos. DHS warns lawbreakers going wheels up as deportation flights increase. In a terse post, the Department of Homeland Security says lawbreakers are going wheels up in Minneapolis, a clear reference to deportation flights carrying criminal non-citizens out of the country. The message is part warning, part reassurance. Federal authorities insist they are focusing on offenders who threaten public safety, even as activists try to block enforcement actions on the ground.
Every voice matters. The power of free speech is more important than ever. Imagine a place where you can share your thoughts freely, explore new ideas, and engage in meaningful conversations anonymously. With online anonymity, you can express yourself without fear of judgment. It's about freedom, creativity, and connection. Join the conversation that matters. Embrace your voice. Celebrate your freedom. Visit 8kun.top today. That's 8kun.top.
That's all for now. Stay alert, stay informed, and never hand your thinking over to anyone on a screen, including me. God bless you, God bless our troops, and God bless the United States of America. See you soon.